Yeah, so as far as this discussion goes, we kind of had a few preset discussion points that we had decided as a committee. So I can get us started there, but really this is open for anything that y'all are curious about. We obviously have different amounts of time of experience of people who've lived in or near the area. So this is really just a chance for y'all to ask away. But I think one of the things that I wanted to kind of touch on first as sort of a lighter note is we had talked about any like good substitutes for Texas staples that people tend to miss when they move. So I thought that'd be a good like icebreaker for us to start off with. So I can say for me personally, I had to reconcile the fact that I would not get Mexican food the way that I was used to getting it in Texas. However, I was exposed to just a huge variety of other options. I just had to tell myself, you need to throw out the window anything that you were used to and just dive headfirst into what's being offered in the area that you moved. But I'd be interested to hear, panelists, was there anything that you would add to that? Anything that you like really just had to let go of that you couldn't find a good substitute for, or that you did find a good substitute for?
You know, I would say I struggled for a long time. We used to always go out to the place, El Paso Cafe in Arlington. It was kind of a staple back in the day. Now we are lucky though, and I am a little bit biased because the owner is a friend, and but Republic Cantina is a new Tex-Mex spot in DC. Republic Kolache, there we go. Therri's on board, but these guys are from Houston. They started with kolaches, and I've been following their journey for a long time because I'm a huge kolache fan, and that is particularly hard to get in Washington. And so, but now they have a location. It's right on the corner of not on the corner of North Capitol in Florida, 43 in as in Nancy Street Northwest. And they do have takeout. They do not have delivery. There is limited patio seating for them at this point, but you can go in, get coffee, breakfast tacos. They also have breakfast tacos as well. But they literally just launched last September, of course, reached pandemic in January or February timeframe. And so, but they've been able to pull together a pretty good pickup service there. So I think that's a really good option. As far as barbecue, it's too overpriced, guys. I mean, you know, I mean, Hill Country is expensive. There's a couple others that are
not that bad.
But it's you can go to Hill Country to kind of get a sample. But I have found Monk's Barbecue is a place out in Purcellville. You may not want to venture out that far. It's about an hour and 15 minutes, but it's in Purcellville, Virginia. And it's something I discovered during the pandemic, and we love going out there to grab. It's the best barbecue I've had and more affordable, more like Texas prices than what you find.
What's the name of that place?
Monk's.
Yeah, can you put that in the chat, please?
This is the most important thing right now.
I disagree with Stoney. There's a lot of barbecue, and there's an award winner in Old Town Alexandria, right near the waterfront, Merton Mixon, I think. And we went to try it. My son and I kind of go around to barbecue places trying them, and he had pulled pork egg rolls. They were good. That was some good eating. And the brisket was good, burnt ends brisket. Last week I tried a place in Frederick called the Black Hog, and it was really good. When you go in there, they have like signs from Lockhart. So it's like Lockhart style. They had Memphis style, and I don't know, Memphis and Carolina or something. Who paid attention to that when they had Lockhart, but it was really good. And the Hill Country place that Stoney was talking about is down in DC. And my son went to Georgetown and he found it. And we just in February had all his like squad, and I had his birthday party there. And they have pictures of Shiner Bach. It looks like Texas in there. It looks like a Texas dance hall. They have Shiner, you know, neon signs around. They have all these lots of A&M and UT yearbook photos in there, old ones, and it's really Texas. And they have downstairs, they have a band. Like my son saw Kevin Fowler there. So it's a really fun place. Now the sides are not Texas. The sides are really weird. It's like peaches and the beans and stuff. It's some, you know, weird stuff, not Texas, but the meat is really good. And one of the things we were worried about is Whataburger. There's no substitute. And Bluebell ice cream. So we eat Jenny's ice cream, JENI, but it's like $10 for a pint. You can get it at the grocery store, and they have a few shops around. Like there's one in Old Town Alexandria, really good flavor, sort of like Lick in Austin and San Antonio, where it's like chili pepper and chocolate flavor. It's sort of like that. So not quite Bluebell, but it's really good, like Bluebell quality. Therri, do you have another?
Yeah, it looked like you had something to add.
Yeah, no, they actually sell Bluebell at the Walmarts in Alexandria. I have a close
no,
friend.
she froze. Oh, okay.
Yeah, so they sell Bluebell at the Walmarts in Alexandria. There's 2 Walmarts. I believe both of them do. I only go to one in particular. I'll have to look up the location. But I have a close friend here. We're actually sorority sisters, and she's from Dallas. And she lives not too far from me in Maryland. And we go down with our cooler, and we get about a half dozen tubs of Bluebell ice cream.
And what's the price? Is it?
Honestly, I've never even bothered to look. It's just like they got Bluebell.
Okay, that's good. I'm gonna go do that.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be more than you would pay in Texas, but Virginia does have Bluebell. Honestly, life hack, especially in the winter months, because it's so cold, I actually have my family send me stuff. I'm from South Texas. Tortillas ship really well during the winter. Also, when I go home, I typically stock up on certain things. I've been known to bring meat back. What else?
I brought cheese back because Velveeta, to make queso, Velveeta here is like $12 for a block, and it's like 6. So when I went back to Austin at Christmas, I came home with 3 blocks of Velveeta in my bag.
Yeah, I have a food bag for when I go back to Texas. I hear HEB does nationwide shipping now, so that's maybe one way to go. But leverage your family connections, family and friends. One thing, I have to have Whataburger ketchup. I don't use other ketchup.
You can order it from them. I've ordered it. I have it.
Yeah, my cousin is sending my next box of ketchup. So, yeah, life hack. Get people to send you stuff.
But like Therri said, there's just so many. I mean, what, Andrew?
I said, what's the best burger place around here? Yeah, I know there's no substitute for Whataburger, but I've been here a year and a half, and I haven't found anything anywhere close.
Therri, we talked about this at our alumni lunch. Therri, y'all haven't found anything either.
I haven't really found anything that's just Whataburger-esque. And I'm from Corpus Christi, hometown of Whataburger, so I say it a little funny. I'm sorry, but yeah, I haven't found anything as of yet. I always check their website.
The food here, it's
to see if
it's international. I mean, like Therri was saying, there's so much to find, so many places to go, and all different kind of food that dining out is a real, like hobby, pastime. It's a fun thing to do, but gotta hit Whataburger when you go back to Texas.
There's just some things that you won't be able to substitute for sure. One of the things that I wanted to ask y'all, for those that have moved to the area, what do you have tips for people that are trying to figure out how they can adjust to how different things are? And I know there's definitely a mixture of experience as far as having lived up there, like Andrew, I think, you and Kim definitely more recently. I lived there for 5 years, but it's been a while since I've lived there. And obviously we have our 2 veterans who've definitely been in the area a while, but what do you wish somebody had told you about moving to the area?
I wish someone had told me about the taxes. So I was admitted to Hopkins for a PhD program that came fully funded. And the amount of money that they were giving me per year, was not extravagant, but the way I budgeted it, I figured I could make it work. It would be enough. I did not realize how high Maryland's state tax is. First of all, we come from a state with no state tax. But then to move to a state that has a higher state tax than most other states. And then once I eventually left Baltimore, I moved to a county that has a county tax. So just when you're looking at places of employment, at positions, and you're negotiating your salary, just keep in mind that your tax rate is going to be much higher than you would normally expect, considering, you know, where we're coming from.
That county tax was a real, that one hurt.
Yeah, it
too, but I was like, county tax? Man, really?
It really hurts, but you get what you pay for. I live in a county that has a really great public school system that I really love. So it hurts, but I will continue to pay it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's same for me. I didn't know. I had a realtor look for me, though I'm only renting, but I told her that I wanted to go to either Catholic University or University of Maryland. And I'm more of a Virginia girl. I just always thought I'd be in Virginia. And when I came to visit my son here, I would always stay in Virginia. And she kept pushing me to Maryland, and I didn't know anything about it. I hadn't been to Maryland. I'd been to Baltimore, but flew in, stayed there, flew out. So I really didn't know anything about Maryland. I kept turning my nose up at it. And then I fell in love with my condo and went ahead and did this. And when I got my job, it was about $3,000 a year less than what I was looking for. And I thought, well, $3,000, big deal. You know, that's not going to, oh, okay, let's do it. And then when I got my first paycheck and it took out federal tax and my state tax withdrawal was the same as federal, I was like, what? This $3,000 does make a difference. So we renegotiated because I didn't do my homework, but I was a little shocked about it. But I will say that the upside has been that Maryland is beautiful. And I had no idea. I'd been to Williamsburg, I'd been to other places in Virginia, thought it was lovely, and it is. But Maryland has, I mean, I'm born and raised in Texas, lived there all my life, but the land here is prettier than Texas. It's rolling green fields, and it's just beautiful. The highways are lined with trees. Everyone that's come to visit me, and we've gone out to like Frederick, Maryland, and to some of the Civil War sites, when we're driving down the highways or even on the Beltway, they're like, oh, it's all covered in trees. And I'm like, yeah. And they're tall trees because there's not drought here. You know? So it's really pretty and fun to go out in the countryside and go to the little rural areas. And there's, like I said, tons of Civil War sites, lots of great hiking and state parks and national parks around here, in forests, national forests. I think we only have one in Texas. And so it's a lot of fun. And I spend a lot more time because of the weather outside here than I ever could in Texas. So you get more, even though we have a winter, I love the winter, and this year was pretty mild. So it's pretty fun to go hiking in the early spring when it's getting cool, and in the fall when it's getting cool. So there's a lot of upsides to moving here, even though, yeah, Maryland is apparently the wealthiest state, and it's because they take our tax money and put it in the bank.
You were talking about weather. I think that there's way more open window weather in that area than I ever would have thought I could experience down here. So that's something to look forward to when you're heading up that way. Those of y'all that joined, guests, do y'all have any general questions for the panelists? I have a couple more prompts we talked about, but I really would love to hear from y'all. Ian, it seems like you've definitely been up here before, or have you moved up here already? Just based on a couple of the comments you made. And then Andrew, I'd love to hear, where in Virginia are you at again?
I'm in Sterling, Virginia. I work in Dulles. My girlfriend works in like the Tyson's Corner area. So one thing that I would have liked to have known before moving out here was the price of houses. So I wish I would have negotiated my starting salary a little bit better. Again, with the Virginia state tax, I got to pay property taxes on my car. That's new. Things like that. But yeah, the housing prices, I'm looking to buy a townhouse next year in Virginia, and Virginia housing is pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, if you move out further, it gets a little more reasonable. But like my condo is like 622 square feet. It's half of my apartment in San Antonio, and my rent is $300 more than it was in San Antonio. But this building only has about 46 condos, and there's usually one for sale. And I saw that there was one for sale just like mine, 622 square feet, $375. So I won't be buying anything here unless I hit the Maryland lottery, right? So, but I think I've seen some things that are bigger than this that are in the low 200s, and that's probably doable. The property tax is lower here because you have the state tax, but with it being withdrawn from your paycheck, it's kind of like it's gone and you don't notice. And I know in San Antonio, where I owned homes, having that 3-point-something% property tax, I think it just kind of evens out. You know, like here, the property tax isn't that high. In San Antonio, I paid, $3,000 or plus on $100,000. So, everyone scared me about registering my car. They said it was going to be so expensive. And in San Antonio, I paid like $85 a year. But here it was like $270 for 2 or 3 years at a time. So I thought, well, it comes out to the same. So I think it just all kind of comes out in the wash, really. Might be a little bit more, but yeah, Andrew's right. The housing is
And then also,
surprising. But Therri, you bought a house?
I did buy a house. I paid an outrageous amount of money for a townhouse. So I bought in Howard County, Maryland, and particularly with Columbia. Columbia also has a Columbia tax. So, yeah, I paid more than what I would have paid had I ventured out of Columbia. But my husband would not be moved from this area. So we just sucked it up and did it. But I think you do bring up a good point, Kim. Some things tend to even out. Like you pay extra for a car, but like you go through inspection once and then your car is never inspected again, so you don't have that fee. So I think that's good to consider. And also just the way you view it, you're getting what you're paying for. Texas is a state that doesn't tax a lot, but honestly, I feel like in some areas it kind of shows. But, I feel like that the taxes here are worth what you're getting, like the upkeep of the parks and things like that, the roads and the schools. It shows.
So one of the other just general questions that a lot of people asked when they registered for this evening was about making the transition and how you adjusted to making the move out of state and getting settled. So do y'all have any tips around settling in, forming a network, especially if it's somebody who's never lived outside of Texas before and doesn't know anyone up there? And then definitely any chance that y'all want to jump in and ask your own questions, y'all feel free to, our attendees.
So one thing I'll say, and it's something that doesn't often get discussed, but like you're moving to a new climate. Particularly for me, I'm from South Texas, and then I went to college in Dallas, and then I moved to Maryland, and I was sick my first year a lot. Not like majorly sick, but just sinus infections. There's different trees up here, so it might trigger different types of allergies. And the one thing that helped, honestly, was starting to work out. I work out 6 days a week now, and people ask me what keeps me motivated. I'm like, yeah, it's cool to be healthy, but I started working out and then I didn't get sick for 6 months. So just know that it will take your body time to adjust depending on where you're coming from in Texas to the climate. Also be careful with your first spring, going around the cherry blossoms. They do trigger allergies for a lot of people here. They might trigger yours.
There's so much more stuff that flowers up there than there is down here. So that's a great point about, I think, especially if you're not used to having actual fall and actual spring, your body doesn't know what to do with it, I would say. So that's a great point.
I think that, yeah, that was a real priority for me, was to make friends. And, I was coming up here. My son was going to Georgetown. Don't judge me. I followed my kid to college. Can any of y'all imagine if your mom had followed you and moved to where you went to college? He was down in Georgetown. I'm up here in Silver Spring, about, 20-25 minute drive to get to him. And we do Adventure Saturday together. So I would go pick him up on Saturday and we would go adventuring somewhere. But other than that, also my age, I read all this great stuff about how it's so hard for women my age to make friends in the first place. And then I was moving to a new city. So people around here aren't like Texans. They don't greet each other on the street for the most part, but I would just force it. And I would just walk down the street and be like, hello, hi, and then they were kind of like, oh, hi, and so I did that in my building. And quickly, a few people on the board of my condo building asked if I wanted to be on the board. I said, I can, I'm renting. So they said, do you want to be the social chair? So I started a trivia team. We had a Therri trivia team in San Antonio. So I started a trivia team. There's a place just around the corner that has trivia on Tuesday nights. And so I made friends with my building that way. I started a book club. And then, don't laugh, but some of these guys on my trivia team were pressuring me to date and said to get on Bumble. And I took it as like a dare. But when I got on Bumble, I saw that they have dating, business networking, and BFFs. So I said, I got on Bumble. I found a best friend. And they were like, that's not what we meant. But I did find a best friend. And she joined my trivia team. And I see her once a week now. And then I just recently met another girl, another lady. I know this sounds weird, but and we're having lunch this Saturday at a winery. So and they have meetups. If you're moving to a new town, meetup is a great thing to join. And they have you meet at a park and hike with a group of people. And I've met a couple of people through that. A couple of women that were on a hike. I went on like a midnight or a moonlight walk around the memorials downtown and met a couple of people there. On a tour of Arlington Cemetery, and met some people there. So I would say, most of you will probably, if you're coming for an internship, you're going to network and be friends with your roommates and other interns. Or if you're coming to work, you'll make friends at work. But if you're somewhere, where that's not going to happen, you kind of have to put yourself out there and find these things. But there's so many things going on in DC that you can, go to a festival and make a best friend.
Meetup was great, I found, for meeting other young adults, and there were based on interest groups or based on things you like to do. I did this scavenger hunt on the National Mall between the Smithsonian museums with like the group of 20s and 30s, and it's just not a thing that exists in Houston. I wish it did when I moved back down here. Actually, I kind of got spoiled to DC. But James, I saw that you had a question. Would you like to jump in and ask your question?
Yeah, that'd be great. I don't know if this necessarily relates, but having to do with kind of the transportation network around DC, I know I've traveled a little bit there, but is it pretty easy to navigate in terms of like making it to outside cities like Alexandria or surrounding areas? Because I know that the metro in DC is really great, but I was wondering if there's good connections to get out and kind of explore things outside of DC proper.
Yeah, there's definitely a station in Alexandria, and you can get to Old Town and go explore. I think the metro system goes pretty far out. And there's also, like Car2Go or Zipcar, there's all those kind of things where you can rent a car for a day and drive out. Or there's the MARC train, which goes further out. Like it goes like to Harper's Ferry, which is pretty far out there. I've seen it out there coming in. So yeah, there's lots of ways to get around. Like Therri said, you can take a train to New York, to Philadelphia, Baltimore.
There's shared stations. Some of the stations you can actually get on Metro or MARC or
yeah,
it's several places.
And there's Union Station. You can get anywhere from there downtown. So it's definitely doable to get out. And I do so recommend that, even for people who are just here for a semester for internship or Archer. Of course, there's so much in DC, and you could spend the entire semester and not hit all the museums. But I really recommend getting out. Because you can get to Gettysburg from here, all the Civil War sites around here, and just all the places that are in this area, like the Shenandoah National Park. There's mountains, there's skiing. It's like 2 hours from here is a ski resort that I went to this winter. So and then it's a big boating and water place. I've been kind of surprised about that. I mean, Annapolis, there's all this sailing. You don't drive far from here and go over the Chesapeake Bay Bridge, my favorite thing to do. And there's sailboats out there. We don't have that stuff in Texas. I mean, these are huge sailboats, not little, like 2-man sailboats like we have on lakes in Texas. It's really cool. Skiing and water.
Non-train recommendations, like what are the good bus, like have any of y'all tried any of the bus services between DC and New York or Philly? I know Megabus was a thing when I was up there, but
I think at one time Bolt Bus was something that I'd used for many of my, not wife, but girlfriend at the time. We went back and forth from New York for 3 years, so I got very familiar. Ironically, where City Center is in Washington now used to be the bus stop for Megabus and Bolt Bus, and so that was always a convenient option. But the other benefit you have with Amtrak, if you're doing that trip to New York, you can't completely be reimbursed, but if you book those far in advance, you do get it refunded, and you have to refund it back to your account. So you can find a ticket to New York for less than $100, which is just save some time, because at times, as I was doing the bus more frequently, breakdowns would happen, and there's not a lot of alternatives once a bus breaks down outside of Philadelphia en route to New York. And so, there are some benefits to paying a little bit extra for the train, but the bus was a pretty frequent and easily used option back and forth to New York.
Yeah.
And here in the city, they have like circulator. Therri, have you ever done, because I know in Silver Spring, there's like a circulator that takes you around and it's free and you can hop on and hop off, and they have that in DC too.
Yeah, so Baltimore is pretty big on their circulator. So they have their own, I think it's MTA, Maryland Transit Authority. But Baltimore has the Charm City circulator. So Baltimore is also known as Charm City. They have the Charm City circulator. When I lived there, there were 3 routes that actually went out a pretty good distance. I think they may have added more routes since then. I know they've also added a water route. If you ever want to go check out Inner Harbor and like go over to Harbor East, they have that. I would recommend Mark if you want to go between Baltimore and DC over Amtrak. I just find that it tends to be cheaper. I've rode it quite a few times. I've never had a breakdown while on the Mark train. I think Stoney brought up a good point about the bus versus train. I've taken Bolt Bus to New York and it was fine, but buses do break down and it's kind of tough to kind of get out of that jam. You basically have to wait for another bus to come. Amtrak, I use Amtrak, but I'm not a fan of their app, and I'm all about using apps. But they are a good resource as well. And also, I've been known to catch a flight for a quick day trip.
And the Mark train is MARC. What is if you want to look up their website and look at their routes and stuff, but what is the bus called? Bolt Bus?
Bolt Bus. There's Bolt Bus and then there's Megabus. I've never actually used Megabus, but Bolt Bus is pretty good.
I did Megabus once. It was okay. I mean, it had Wi-Fi and everything. It was comfortable, but we also were like, we're leaving at 5 a.m., spending a whole day, and then getting back on a late bus and like sleeping on the way back. So when I had work trips, I definitely took the train because it was way more comfortable, and you can actually sit, like, depending on what car you're in, you can actually sit at a table even. So it really depends on what you want to do, but it can be pretty inexpensive if you do a little bit of planning and figure out like what your schedule can accommodate. Maybe you just take an earlier time or avoid maybe when you know there's going to be a lot of commuters, because that peak time tends to affect the pricing. But yeah, I mean, any chance you get to really branch out, there's just so much nearby. I mean, there's beaches pretty close by too.
Yeah, I was going to say the beaches are.
I used to go to Delaware.
Andrew, have y'all been to the beach yet?
Yeah, I've been to Virginia Beach, and Wallops Island is actually where we launch our spacecraft. So I work as a mission assurance engineer, and we launch spacecraft from Wallops. But there's Chincoteague Island there. That's really nice. It's also not impossible to drive around places. Like I drove to Staten Island when we stayed in New York. I drove to Philadelphia. So I don't know. I like driving. So.
Yeah, I've been driving out of the
I've been to
city.
Shenandoah quite a few
I
times.
took a train. I took the MART to Baltimore for work, for a meeting one day for work, just there in the morning and back. And yeah, it's really easy. But yeah, the beaches are great. So I'm going to Ocean City for Labor Day weekend. It'll be my first time. And I like to go to this beach in Maryland where there was a Civil War prison camp, Point Lookout. And the beach is actually, it's Chesapeake Bay. So it's not actually the ocean, but I mean, there are waves. It's huge. It's not like, you know, when you think of a bay, it's really big. So I've gone to several beaches along that, and it's pretty nice. The water isn't quite as salty as the Gulf Coast in there.
So Ocean City, if you want to try somewhere a little less crowded, you can head just slightly up the road a piece, and there's Bethany Beach and also Rehoboth Beach. Rehoboth was my favorite.
Yeah, they're on my list. So
yeah, I typically go to Ocean City. So my husband and I will either go Easter weekend or the week after Labor Day, just because it's to be more economical and less crowded. But I do have friends that go to Rehoboth Beach. I've never been there, but I've heard really good things. The only thing about Delaware is I wouldn't necessarily recommend driving. Well, if you drive, just know that they have a crazy amount of tolls. I think because they're such a small state, they put tolls everywhere to kind of help generate money. And tolls on the East Coast are not like tolls in Texas, where they track you every so often and you pay like 80 cents or $1.20. Like tolls are like $3, $4, $5 a pop.
Yeah. It cost me like $15 to go to a Steinmart once.
Yeah.
So I found a Steinmart in Virginia, and I was missing Steinmart, and I went through like 3 tolls, and then I changed my GPS to avoid tolls. But then I got a transponder. I felt like, oh, I'm really living here now because I got the Easy Pass thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, get the Easy Pass.
I haven't used it once, but
well, my husband likes playing poker, so we would often go to Atlantic City. So that's often where we go to the beach at. And round trip is like $35 in tolls. So
yeah, and that's what I've heard about driving to New York, that the tolls make it
you might as well take a train or take a bus.
Yeah, or even fly. Yeah.
So it looks like they're messaging me from the other room. They're wrapping up their last couple of questions. Gary, James, our other attendees, do y'all have any other questions for the panelists in terms of moving to or living in the DC area? Really, anything's open for discussion if there's anything you're wondering about.
Tell us, are you planning on moving here, or is that why?
I've been to DC 4 or 5 times, and it's absolutely beautiful. Every place around DC, Georgetown, Alexandria, everything is just gorgeous. I definitely am moving there right after graduation for work. But when you guys were choosing a location to live in, what did you guys prioritize between your commute and rent, the location? What did y'all focus
on? For me, I would say, so I lived in Baltimore because I attended Hopkins. So I lived in downtown Baltimore for the majority of the time, just because it was much easier to get to the East Baltimore campus from there. Once I graduated, I immediately joined FDA in Silver Spring. At the time, my husband worked in Glen Burnie, Maryland. So where we live now, Columbia, Maryland, is the halfway point distance-wise between those 2 locations. At the time, he had the easier commute because it's easier to move away from DC than to go towards DC in terms of traffic. But we just wanted to kind of minimize the commute for both of us. That was the main thing. And then we were looking to buy a house, and he actually got transferred to Largo, Maryland, which is fairly close to DC. And so Columbia became inconvenient for both of us, but my husband loves Columbia. He did not want to leave. So now we just suck it up and do the commute.
Largo is Blue Orange Line, one of those. It's in there, a Largo Town Center stop. So yeah, for me, it was all about expense at first because I was moving straight after college. So it initially was about where can I afford, and am I going to have to get a roommate? Where should I try to find a roommate? Because I don't know anybody up here. And then after being there for a while, then trying to see, okay, what's the balance between what I can afford and still be able to go do things. So I wasn't like house poor because I was paying too much rent, because there's a lot to do for free, but you still want to be able to explore. And then what was my quality of life going to be like with the commute too? So, but it took me moving 3 or 4 times to kind of find that balance. So I would recommend, just personally, unless it's really advantageous to sign a longer term lease, don't lock yourself into anything longer than a year or 18 months if you can when you first get up there, so that you can kind of pivot if you want to.
Yeah, I really didn't know where to move, and it took me a long time. I mean, I probably looked for like 6 months. And I finally hired an apartment finder, but I hired a private, like a realtor who was doing it. And it cost $400, and she set up the appointments for me to look. And I gave her a list, and I thought, you know, my rent was pretty low. And that's the first thing I asked her was, is this even doable on this budget? And she said, oh yeah. And I had a list of, like, I didn't want carpet. I wanted a washer and dryer in the unit. I said I'm just too old to be going to a laundry room, and I wanted a balcony. I wanted some kind of outdoor something, you know, because some of the buildings without balconies just look like an office building, and I didn't want that. And I wanted a dining area. So it was a hard list to get for my rent, but she said it was doable, and she did. But like I said, she kept sending me out to Maryland, and I didn't want that. But in the end, I had to choose between a bigger condo in Arlington and this one. But I chose this one. I wanted something near the metro. So the other condo, I had to take a little shuttle bus to the metro. Like, oh, we have a shuttle, picks you up, takes you, brings you back in the evening, you know. But I didn't want to be dependent on that. And this one, I just walked like 10 or 12 minutes to the metro. So it had everything that I wanted.
The washer and dryer thing was a good point. I hadn't even considered that. And then when I started looking at places, that's a premium you pay for, which may not be like a big deal here in Texas, especially if you're coming from a college town where that's kind of standard in apartments. It's just not the case in the area. And
especially with older buildings. And also there's parking. You know, since I had my car, I wanted parking, and they charge a lot for parking here. I mean, even a surface lot can be like $175 a month added onto your rent. But I just, you know, got lucky. I think mine is included in my rent, but I park under the building next door. I love my parking garage, except that it always smells like weed. I don't know why someone's smoking weed in there, but it does. And, or skunk. It smells like a skunk. But it's like $75. It's less than my office. My office is $85 a month to park, and this is $75. So, it was just a good deal, because everything else I looked at, parking was a minimum of $125.
Great. All right. Well, I know that a couple people have other things they have to jump off and do. We're certainly past our time, but thank you all for taking the time to join us this evening. Panel, thank you for your insights. We have people that live in the area already, and we have people that are interested in moving to the area. Almost everybody that participated tonight, I think everybody actually was on Therri Connect. So y'all really take advantage of this network. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me, and I can help connect you with people. But as you can see, everybody has just their own experiences and really is here to help out. And then hopefully we can do some more in-person socials whenever social distancing stops being an issue. We've done brunches a couple of times, and I would really love to get something regular together, because we have interns coming in, you know, every semester. Just doing some sort of service project or social on a regular basis would be great. So in the near future, hopefully that'll be a thing we can do. But yeah, if y'all can think of any other questions or anything else you want to add for the panelists, feel free to shoot me an email, or, you know, put it in Therri Connect. We have a group in Therri Connect specifically for people that live in the area too. So if you put a question there, I'll see it, and I can kind of help circulate it among people that are able to answer it for you.
Nice seeing all of y'all.
It was so
Thank you guys.
All right.
Take care.
Same to you, Jerry. I think I owe you a response to an email about Therri gear too, so I need to go back
Yes.
to my email.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate it, Amber.
Of course. Well, it's
Thanks,
so nice
Amber.
to see y'all. Y'all have a great evening. Everyone take care.
Hey, you too.
You too.